The security guard's hand was already on my shoulder when my daughter-in-law Crystal pointed her perfectly manicured finger at me and said those words that would change everything. "Get this pauper away from the table. She's making my guests uncomfortable." I stood there in my simple cotton dress and worn cardigan, my sensible shoes dusty from the walk to the restaurant. Around the table sat my son Terrence, his wife Crystal in her designer gown, and about 8 of their fancy friends. The restaurant was one of those expensive places with white tablecloths and candles that cost more than most people's grocery bills. Crystal's face was twisted with disgust as she looked at me. "Security! Why are you still standing there? Remove this woman immediately!" My son Terrence sat frozen in his chair, his mouth open, but no words coming out. My 2 grandbabies, Amari and little Zoe, looked confused and scared. "Ma'am," the security guard said gently to me, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I looked directly at Crystal. Her eyes were cold, calculating. She knew exactly who I was. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate cruelty, performed in front of an audience to humiliate me. "Crystal," I said quietly, "you know who I am." She laughed, a high, fake sound. "I don't associate with people who dress like they shop at thrift stores. Terrence, tell security to remove your mother before she ruins my entire evening." That's when everything inside me went completely still. Before we continue, shout out to Keisha Johnson from Detroit. We appreciate the love you show by commenting and sharing. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand how a woman like me ended up being thrown out of a restaurant by her own daughter-in-law. My name is Loretta Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. I was born in 1953 in a small town in Mississippi, the youngest of 6 children. My parents were sharecroppers who never owned nothing but the clothes on their backs and the faith in their hearts. But Mama always told me, "Loretta, baby, you got something special in you. You got a mind that works different. Don't ever let nobody tell you what you can't do." I left Mississippi when I was 18, with $47 in my pocket and a bus ticket to Chicago. I worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, serving lunch at a diner, and doing laundry on weekends. Every penny I didn't need for rent and food went into a coffee can under my bed. By the time I was 25, I had saved enough to start my own small cleaning company. Just me and 2 other ladies cleaning offices and houses. We worked hard, treated people right, and the business grew. By 30, I had 15 employees. By 40, I had contracts with major office buildings all over Chicago. That's when I made the move that changed everything. I started a catering company on the side, specializing in soul food for corporate events. People couldn't get enough of my mama's recipes: the fried chicken, the collard greens, the peach cobbler. White executives would fight over who got to book us for their company parties. I met my husband Raymond when I was 32. He was a good man, a mechanic with strong hands and a kind heart. We got married at my church, Greater Faith Baptist, with the whole congregation celebrating. Raymond never cared that I made more money than him. He was proud of me, always bragging to his friends about his business mogul wife. We had our son Terrence 2 years later. That boy was the light of our lives. We raised him with love, discipline, and the same values my parents gave me. Work hard, treat people right, remember where you came from, stay humble. Raymond died 8 years ago from a heart attack. Sudden, no warning. One day he was here, the next day he was gone. That nearly broke me, but I had Terrence and my business to keep me going. By then, my little cleaning company had grown into Mitchell Hospitality Services, a huge corporation providing cleaning, catering, and facility management for hotels, restaurants, and office buildings across Illinois and 5 other states. We employed over 3,000 people, many of them Black folks from neighborhoods just like the one I grew up in. But here's the thing. I never changed how I lived. I still lived in the same modest house Raymond and I bought in 1988. I still drove my 2012 Honda. I still shopped at the same grocery store and went to the same church every Sunday. I wore simple clothes because expensive designer stuff never made sense to me. Why would I spend $500 on a purse when I could use that money to help someone pay their rent? Terrence knew I had money, of course. He worked for my company in the finance department. Good salary, benefits, everything. But I never told him exactly how much the company was worth or that I owned it completely. I kept a low profile, let my managers run the day-to-day operations. And most employees didn't even know who owned the company. That's where Crystal comes in. Terrence met her 4 years ago at some young professionals networking event. She was pretty, I'll give her that. Light skin, long hair, always dressed like she was going to a fashion show. She worked in hotel management, had a business degree from a decent school. The first time Terrence brought her to Sunday dinner, I tried. I really tried to like her. But something in her eyes was cold. She looked around my house like she was inspecting it for problems. She barely touched the food I'd spent all afternoon cooking. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, "have you ever thought about updating your home? I know some excellent interior designers who could really transform this space." "I like my home just fine," I told her, keeping my voice pleasant. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, it's very quaint." Over the next few months, I watched her slowly change my son. Terrence had always been humble, grateful, respectful. But Crystal filled his head with ideas about status and appearances. She convinced him they needed to move to a luxury apartment downtown. She insisted on expensive cars, designer clothes, fancy restaurants. "Mama, you don't understand," Terrence said one day when I expressed concern. "Crystal comes from a different background. Her family has standards." "Standards?" I repeated. "Baby, what's wrong with the standards you were raised with?" He looked uncomfortable. "Nothing, Mama. It's just different now." They got married 2 years ago in an expensive ceremony that Crystal's family paid for. I wasn't involved in the planning. Crystal made it clear she had a specific vision that didn't include my input. I sat in the church in my best dress, watching my son marry a woman I barely recognized him around. The grandbabies came quick. Amari first, then Zoe a year later. Beautiful children. I loved them instantly, but Crystal barely let me see them. Always some excuse. They were too busy, the babies were sleeping, they had other plans. About 6 months ago, Crystal got a new job. She was so excited, bragging about it constantly. "It's with Mitchell Hospitality Services," she told me at a rare family dinner at their apartment. "One of the biggest hospitality companies in the region. I'm going to be an operations manager at their flagship property. The salary is amazing." I just smiled and nodded. "That's wonderful, honey." She had no idea, none at all. I'd seen her name come across my desk in the HR reports. Crystal Davis Mitchell, new hire, operations manager. I could have blocked it, but I didn't. I wanted to see what kind of worker she was. Wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, I'd been wrong about her. The reports came back mixed. She was good at her job, I'll give her that. Organized, efficient, met her numbers. But she was cruel to the staff, especially the black women who worked as housekeepers and servers. The complaints piled up. She was dismissive, rude, made demeaning comments about their education and appearance. My HR director, a sharp woman named Vivian Carter, who'd been with me for 20 years, came to my office one day with a file. "Mrs. Mitchell," Vivian said carefully, "I know this is your daughter-in-law, but we're getting serious complaints about her behavior. She called one of our housekeepers ghetto trash last week." I felt sick. "Document everything," I told Vivian. "Every single complaint. I want a complete record." "Are you going to tell your son?" Vivian asked. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." That was 3 weeks ago. Then came the phone call that led to that terrible dinner. Terrence called me on a Tuesday evening. "Mama, Crystal wants to have a special dinner this Saturday at La Maison Rouge. It's this fancy French place downtown. She's inviting some of her colleagues and friends. She specifically asked that you come." I was surprised. Crystal never invited me anywhere. "She wants me there?" "Yeah, Mama. She said it's important. Please come? Something in his voice made me suspicious. But he was my son. I said yes. I should have known better. I arrived at the restaurant right on time, 6 o'clock. It was one of those places where they look at you up and down before they even let you in. The host eyed my simple dress and cardigan with clear disdain. I'm here for the Mitchell party, I told him. He checked his list, his lips pressed together in disapproval. Follow me. He led me through the restaurant to a private dining room in the back. Through the glass doors I could see the table, crystal glasses, fancy place settings, well-dressed people laughing and talking. And there was Crystal, holding court like a queen, in a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I opened the door and walked in. The conversation died instantly. Crystal's eyes landed on me, and for just a split second, I saw calculation in them. Then her face transformed into exaggerated shock and disgust. "What is this?" she said loudly, standing up. "Who let you in here?" Terrence looked confused. "Crystal, that's my—" "I don't care who she is," Crystal cut him off. "Look at her. She looks like she wandered in off the street. This is a high-class establishment and we're having a business dinner." I stood there, speechless. The other guests were staring, whispering. One of Crystal's friends, a woman in too much jewelry, leaned over and said loudly, "Oh my God, Crystal, is this one of those homeless people who wander into restaurants?" Crystal's eyes glittered. This was planned, all of it. She'd invited me here to humiliate me in front of her friends. "Security," she called out, her voice sharp and commanding. And that's when the security guard came in and put his hand on my shoulder. "Get this pauper away from the table. She's making my guests uncomfortable." I looked at my son. Terrence? He was pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. But he didn't stand up. He didn't defend me. The security guard tugged at my arm gently. "Ma'am, please." I pulled my arm away. "I can walk myself out." I turned and left that room with my head held high. Behind me I heard Crystal's high, cruel laugh and her friends joining in. But they didn't see my face. They didn't see the cold fury that had settled into my bones. I walked out of that restaurant, got into my old Honda, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Thank God for Brenda Washington. She'd been my attorney for 30 years, and she lived above her office. I called her on the way. "Loretta?" she answered, alarmed. "It's Saturday night. What's wrong?" "Brenda, I need to see you right now, and I need you to pull every file we have on Mitchell Hospitality Services and every employee complaint filed in the last year." "What happened?" "Something that's going to change everything," I told her. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. I spent that whole night in Brenda's office. We went through every complaint filed against Crystal, every rude comment, every dismissive remark, every instance of her treating my employees, especially the black women who worked the hardest, like they were beneath her. "Loretta," Brenda said around midnight, "you have grounds to terminate her immediately. This behavior violates company policy multiple times over." "No," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "I want to do this different. I want her to understand exactly what she's done." We worked until 3 a.m, crafting a plan. When I finally got home and climbed into bed, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept seeing that look on Crystal's face, the pure malicious joy she'd gotten from humiliating me. And my son, my Terrence, just sitting there, letting it happen. Sunday morning, I got up and went to church like always. Greater Faith Baptist was packed, like it always was. I sat in my usual pew, 4th row from the front. Pastor Reynolds preached about justice and righteousness, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard. "God sees everything," Pastor Reynolds said, his voice ringing through the church. "Every cruelty, every injustice, every time someone with power abuses those without it. And he promises that justice will come." After church, my phone rang. It was Terrence. "Mama," he said, his voice tight. Crystal wants me to tell you that you're not welcome at our home anymore. She said what happened last night was embarrassing, and she doesn't want her social circle to think we're associated with people who don't know how to present themselves properly. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but my voice stayed steady. Is that what you want, Terrence? Long silence. I have to support my wife, Mama. I see, I said. Then I guess we both have to do what we have to do. What does that mean? He asked, suddenly nervous. You'll find out tomorrow, I told him, and hung up. Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. I put on my best business suit, the one I wore for board meetings and important negotiations. I did my makeup. I wore the diamond earrings Raymond gave me for our 20th anniversary. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a pauper. I saw Loretta Mitchell, CEO and founder of Mitchell Hospitality Services. I saw a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. I saw someone who was done being disrespected. I drove to the flagship hotel where Crystal worked. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky pink and gold. I walked into that building like I owned it, because I did. The morning manager, David Chen, jumped up from his desk when he saw me. Mrs. Mitchell, we weren't expecting you today. Good morning, David. Is Crystal Davis Mitchell in yet? He checked his computer. She usually arrives around 8:30. I looked at my watch. It was 6:15. Perfect. I'll be in the executive office. When she arrives, send her straight to me. Don't tell her I'm here. Just tell her she's needed in the executive office immediately. David nodded, his eyes wide with curiosity. I went upstairs to the executive office and waited. At 8:37, I heard the elevator ding, heard Crystal's voice in the hallway, laughing with someone about her weekend. The dinner was perfect, she was saying. Everyone was so impressed with the restaurant. Though we did have this awkward moment when Terrence's mother showed up looking like she got dressed at Goodwill. She stopped talking the second she walked into the office and saw me sitting behind the desk. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. What are you doing here? She stammered. I leaned back in the chair and smiled. Crystal, please sit down. We need to have a conversation about your future with this company. I don't understand. Sit down, I said again, my voice harder. She sat. I opened the folder in front of me. Did you know that Mitchell Hospitality Services is a family-owned company? She nodded slowly, confused. Yes, the owner likes to keep a low profile. The owner is sitting right in front of you, I said. I watched the realization hit her like a freight train. You own? I own this entire company. Every hotel, every restaurant, every employee, including you. I let that sink in for a moment. Now, let's talk about your performance. Crystal's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I pulled out the complaints, read them one by one. Her face grew redder with each one. This is who you really are, I said when I finished. You treat people with cruelty because you think you're better than them. You humiliated me at that dinner because you thought I was poor and powerless. You forgot one important lesson my mama taught me. Never judge a book by its cover. Mrs. Mitchell, I can explain. No, I cut her off. You can't. Actions have consequences, Crystal, and yours are about to come due. I pressed the intercom button. David, please send up security and Vivian from HR. Crystal stood up, panicking now. Please, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry, I didn't know. If you had known, you would have been fake nice to my face and cruel to everyone else behind my back, I said coldly. That's not better. That's worse. The door opened. Vivian walked in with 2 security guards and a box. Crystal Davis Mitchell, Vivian said formally. Your position as operations manager is being terminated effective immediately due to multiple violations of company policy regarding employee treatment and workplace conduct. No! Crystal shrieked. You can't do this! I'll sue! However, I continued, and she stopped mid-rant. I'm not heartless. You have a family to support, so I'm offering you a different position. Hope flashed in her eyes. What position? Dishwasher, I said calmly. In the hotel restaurant kitchen, minimum wage, starting today. The color drained from her face completely. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious. You called me a pauper, said I made your guests uncomfortable. Well, now you get to understand what real work feels like. What it's like to be at the bottom, looking up at people who think they're better than you. I stood up. You have two choices. Take the dishwasher position or leave this company with nothing. No recommendation, no severance, nothing. And believe me, after I make some phone calls to my colleagues in the industry, you won't find another management position in hospitality anywhere in this state. Crystal's face crumpled. Please don't do this. You made your choice Saturday night, I told her. Now live with the consequences. She looked at Vivian, at the security guards, then back at me. I'll take the dishwasher position. Good, I said. Report to the kitchen supervisor in 15 minutes. Vivian will show you where to get your uniform. As they let her out, Crystal turned back one more time. Does Terrence know? I smiled. He's about to. The door closed behind them, and I sat back down at the desk and my hands were shaking. Not from fear or regret, but from the rush of finally standing up for myself, for my employees, for every person Crystal had looked down on. I picked up my phone and called my son. He answered on the first ring. Mama, what's going on? Crystal just texted me something crazy about losing her job. Terrence, I said calmly, we need to talk. Come to the Mitchell Hospitality Flagship Hotel, Executive Office, right now. Mama, I'm at work. I know where you work, I said. You work for me, in my company. You have exactly 30 minutes to get here, or you won't have a job either. I hung up before he could respond. 23 minutes later, Terrence burst into the office, his tie crooked, his face red from running. Mama, what is happening? Crystal called me crying, saying you demoted her to dishwasher? That can't be true. Sit down, Terrence. Something in my voice made him sit immediately. I looked at my son, my baby boy who I'd raised to be better than this, and felt my heart break all over again. Do you know what your wife did to me Saturday night? He looked down. Mama, she got carried away. But you embarrassed her in front of her colleagues. I embarrassed her? My voice rose despite my best efforts. I walked into a restaurant I was invited to, wearing the same kind of clothes I've worn my whole life, and she had security remove me like I was trash. She didn't know you were coming. She invited me, I shouted, standing up. She called you and told you to make sure I came. This was planned, Terrence. She wanted to humiliate me in front of her fancy friends. He was quiet now, unable to meet my eyes. And you, I continued, my voice breaking, you sat there. You watched her do it. You're my son, and you didn't say one word to defend me. I'm sorry, Mama. Sorry isn't enough. I wiped my eyes. Terrence, I built this company from nothing. I worked 3 jobs to save money to start it. I grew it into something that provides good jobs for thousands of people. I kept it quiet because I didn't need everyone to know. I didn't need the recognition. But your wife? She works for my company, treats my employees like dirt, and then has the nerve to call me a pauper? Terrence's face had gone pale. Mama, you own Mitchell Hospitality? Every bit of it, I confirmed. And you work in my finance department, have for 4 years. Did you never wonder who signed your paychecks? He looked sick. Your wife is now washing dishes in the hotel kitchen, I told him. That's her punishment for treating people as less than human. As for you, I opened another folder, his employment file. You're a good worker, Terrence. You do your job well, but you've been taking direction from Crystal on how to treat people. I've seen the reports. You've been dismissive to support staff. You've been condescending. You're becoming someone I don't recognize. Mama, please. I'm not firing you, I said, but I'm moving you. You're going to work in facility services for the next 6 months. You're going to clean offices, set up conference rooms, and work directly with the people who keep this company running. You're going to remember where you came from. Tears were streaming down his face now. Mama, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I should have stood up for you. I should have. Yes, you should have, I said firmly. But sorry isn't enough. You need to prove it through your actions. He nodded, unable to speak. And Terrence? Those grandbabies, Amari and Zoe, I want to see them, every Sunday after church. No excuses. Yes, Mama. Anything. I walked around the desk and put my hand on his shoulder. I love you, baby. I always will. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. You understand? He nodded again, then stood up and hugged me tight, crying into my shoulder like he did when he was a little boy. When he finally pulled away, I handed him a tissue. Go talk to your wife. She's in the kitchen. Then both of you need to figure out what kind of people you want to be. After he left, I stood at the window and looked out over the city. My city. The one I'd made my home 54 years ago when I arrived with nothing but hope and determination. My phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. Crystal reported to the kitchen. She's washing pots. Kitchen supervisor says she's crying but working. I typed back, good, keep me updated. Another text came in. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Shanice from housekeeping. I heard what you did. Thank you for standing up for us. We see you, and we appreciate you. Then another, and another. Word was spreading through the company. My employees were reaching out, thanking me. I sat back down at the desk and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief, from the weight of finally setting things right. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because late that afternoon, my phone rang. It was Brenda, my lawyer, and her voice was urgent. Loretta, we have a problem. Crystal's family is threatening to sue. They're claiming wrongful termination and emotional distress, and they're not just coming after the company. They're coming after you personally. I felt my stomach drop. What? Crystal's father is apparently some big-shot lawyer. He's already filed papers. He's claiming you abused your power, that you created a hostile work environment, and that you demoted his daughter out of personal vendetta. He's asking for $5 million in damages. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course there was more. There's something else, Brenda said. He's filed for an emergency injunction. There's a hearing tomorrow morning. If the judge grants it, Crystal gets her job back immediately. And you could be barred from making any personnel decisions at your own company. Can he do that? He can try, Brenda said grimly. And with the right judge and the right arguments, he might succeed. Loretta, you need to be at the courthouse tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to fight this. I hung up the phone and looked at the ceiling. This wasn't just about Crystal anymore. This was about everything I'd built. My company, my legacy, my employees who depended on me. And the Davis family was coming for all of it. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat at my kitchen table with all the documents spread out in front of me, going through everything with Brenda on speakerphone until 4 a.m. They're going to paint you as a vindictive old woman who abused her power, Brenda said. Crystal's father, Gerald Davis, is known for this. He's won cases by making juries feel sorry for his clients. But I have documentation, I said. All those complaints, which he'll say you fabricated after the fact to justify your personal revenge. Brenda sighed. Loretta, this is going to get ugly. Are you sure you want to go through with this? We could settle, give her some money, let her leave quietly. No, I said firmly. I'm not rewarding cruelty. Those complaints are real. Those employees who she hurt are real. If I back down now, what message does that send? That you're wise enough to avoid a public battle. Brenda suggested. Or that rich people can treat poor people however they want and get away with it, I countered. No, we fight. I heard the smile in Brenda's voice. That's the Loretta I know. Okay, get some rest. We'll meet at the courthouse at 8:30. At 7 a.m., I was standing in my closet trying to decide what to wear when my phone rang. It was Pastor Reynolds. Sister Loretta, he said warmly. I heard about the trouble. The prayer chain has been up all night praying for you. Whatever you need, the church family is here. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, Pastor. We know who you are, he continued. We know what you've built and how you've helped people. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. After we hung up, my phone didn't stop. Text messages from church members, from employees, from people whose lives I'd touched over the years, all offering support, prayers, encouragement. By the time I left for the courthouse, I felt wrapped in love. The courthouse was downtown, a massive stone building that had always intimidated me a little. Brenda was waiting outside, her briefcase in hand, and 2 associates with her. Ready? She asked. Ready, I said. We walked inside, through security, and up to the 3rd floor where the hearing was scheduled. As we rounded the corner to the courtroom, I stopped dead. Crystal was there with her father and what looked like a whole legal team. 5 lawyers in expensive suits. Crystal was dressed like she was going to a funeral. Black dress, pearls, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked small and vulnerable, nothing like the cruel woman who'd had me thrown out of that restaurant. But what made my blood run cold was who else was there. Terrence, my son, standing with Crystal and her family. He saw me and looked away, shame written all over his face. Mrs. Mitchell, a voice said behind me, and I turned to see Gerald Davis approaching. He was a tall man in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. I'm Gerald Davis, Crystal's father. I was hoping we could talk before we go in there. I have nothing to say to you, I replied. He smiled, but it was cold. That's unfortunate, because I'm going to destroy you in there. I'm going to show the judge that you're a bitter, vindictive woman who abused her power to punish my daughter for a simple social misunderstanding. When I'm done, you won't just lose this company. You'll lose everything. Brenda stepped between us. That's enough, Mr. Davis. Save it for the courtroom. He chuckled and walked away. Don't let him get to you, Brenda whispered. He's trying to rattle you. The courtroom doors opened, and we filed inside. The judge was a black woman in her 50s, Judge Denise Thompson. I'd heard of her. She was known for being fair but tough, taking no nonsense from anyone. We're here for Davis versus Mitchell, Judge Thompson said, looking over her glasses at both sides. This is a hearing for emergency injunctive relief. Mr. Davis, you have the floor. Gerald Davis stood up, and for the next 20 minutes, he painted a picture of me as a monster. He talked about how Crystal had worked hard to get her position, how she'd been nothing but professional, how I'd orchestrated her humiliation because of a minor social faux pas at a family dinner. Your Honor, he said dramatically, my daughter made a mistake. She didn't recognize her mother-in-law at a crowded dinner party and asked security to check on an unexpected guest. For this innocent error, Mrs. Mitchell has destroyed her career, forcing her to work as a dishwasher in retaliation. This is abuse of power at its worst. He presented Crystal, who took the stand and told her version. She cried on cue, talking about how hard she'd worked, how devoted she was to the company, how she'd never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't even know she owned the company, Crystal sobbed. If I had known, I would never... She stopped, realizing what she was saying. Never what? Judge Thompson asked sharply. Never have treated her that way? Crystal looked flustered. I mean, I would have been more careful. More careful about disrespecting her, or more careful because she had power over you? The judge pressed. Gerald Davis jumped in quickly. Your Honor, my daughter is understandably emotional. I can see that, Judge Thompson said dryly. Ms. Washington, your turn. Brenda stood up, and she was magnificent. Your Honor, opposing counsel would have you believe this is about one bad night. It's not. This is about a pattern of cruelty and abuse that Ms. Crystal Davis Mitchell inflicted on numerous employees over 6 months. She presented the complaints. All of them. Dates, times, witnesses. Women who Crystal had called ghetto trash and uneducated. Men she'd mocked for their clothes or their way of speaking. A housekeeper she'd reduced to tears by saying she smelled poor. These aren't allegations, Brenda said. These are documented incidents with multiple witnesses. Ms. Davis Mitchell created a hostile work environment for dozens of employees, most of them black women from working-class backgrounds. Then Brenda played her trump card. Your Honor, we have security footage from the restaurant that night, the footage that shows exactly what happened at that family dinner. I hadn't known she'd gotten the footage. I watched Gerald Davis's face go pale. The bailiff set up a screen, and we all watched. There I was, walking into that private dining room. You could see me smiling, hopeful. Crystal's face when she saw me. For just a second before she put on her act, you could see the calculating look, the cruel satisfaction, and you could hear everything. What is this? Crystal's voice on the video loud and clear. Who let you in here? Terrence trying to speak. Crystal, that's I don't care who she is. Look at her. She looks like she wandered in off the street. Her friend's comment about homeless people, Crystal calling for security. The words I would never forget. Get this pauper away from the table. She's making my guests uncomfortable. And there was Terrence, sitting frozen, saying nothing. The courtroom was silent when the video ended. Judge Thompson looked at Crystal with an expression of pure disgust. Ms. Davis Mitchell, you knew exactly who that was, didn't you? Crystal opened her mouth, but no words came out. Your Honor, Gerald Davis said desperately, family dynamics are complicated. Don't, Judge Thompson cut him off. Just don't. I've seen enough. She looked at me. Mrs. Mitchell, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why did you demote Ms. Davis Mitchell to dishwasher instead of simply terminating her employment? I stood up slowly. Your Honor, I could have fired her. Maybe I should have. But Crystal has 2 children, my grandchildren. And despite everything, she's still my son's wife. I didn't want to destroy her completely. I wanted her to learn what it feels like to be on the other side. To be the person that people look down on. To understand that every job has dignity, and every person deserves respect. So this was educational? The judge asked. This was consequences, I said firmly. I built my company on the principle that we treat every employee with dignity. From the CEO to the newest dishwasher, everyone matters. Crystal violated that principle repeatedly. The dishwasher position is honest work, and if she's too proud to do it, that says more about her than it does about me. Judge Thompson nodded slowly. Then she looked at Terrence, who'd been sitting silently next to Crystal. Mr. Mitchell, you're the defendant's husband and the plaintiff's son. Do you have anything to say? Terrence stood up, his hands shaking. Your Honor, I was wrong. I was so wrong. My mother raised me better than this. She taught me to respect people, to work hard, to stay humble. And I forgot all of that. I let my wife convince me that appearances mattered more than character. When my mother walked into that restaurant, I should have stood up. I should have defended her. Instead, I sat there like a coward and let her be humiliated. Crystal hissed at him. Terrence, what are you doing? No, he said, turning to her. I'm done. I'm done pretending this was okay. What you did was cruel. What I did by allowing it was unforgivable. He looked back at the judge. My mother didn't abuse her power. She used her power to do what was right. And if anything, she was too generous. Crystal should be grateful she still has a job at all. Gerald Davis looked like he wanted to strangle his son-in-law. Crystal's mouth hung open in shock. Judge Thompson leaned back in her chair. I've heard enough. The request for emergency injunctive relief is denied. Ms. Davis Mitchell's employment status will remain as is pending any further legal action. And Mr. Davis?" She fixed her gaze on Crystal's father. "If you bring this case to trial, I'm going to recommend sanctions for wasting the court's time. This is not wrongful termination. This is appropriate discipline for documented workplace misconduct. Are we clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Gerald Davis said through gritted teeth. "Good. We're adjourned." The gavel came down. I stood there, barely able to believe it was over. Brenda hugged me, and her associates were grinning. Across the aisle, Crystal was screaming at Terrence. "How could you? You just sided with her over me, over your own wife." "You're not the woman I married," Terrence said quietly. "Or maybe you are, and I was just too blind to see it." "We're done," Crystal spat. "You hear me? We're done." "I know," Terrence said, and he sounded almost relieved. As people filed out of the courtroom, I saw something that made my heart swell. Standing in the back row were about 20 people wearing Mitchell Hospitality Services uniforms. Housekeepers, servers, maintenance workers. They'd taken time off work to come support me. When they saw me looking, they stood up and started clapping. Then more people joined in. People from the gallery who'd watched the whole thing. Even the bailiff was nodding with approval. I walked over to my employees, these beautiful people who worked so hard every day. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. "Thank you for being here." Shanice, the housekeeper who'd texted me, stepped forward. "Mrs. Mitchell, you stood up for us. Now we stand up for you. That's how family works." Family. These people. They were my family too. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Word had spread about the case. "Mrs. Mitchell," one of them called out, "is it true you demoted your daughter-in-law to dishwasher as revenge?" I stopped and looked directly at the camera. "I demoted an employee who repeatedly violated company policy on workplace conduct. The fact that she's my daughter-in-law is irrelevant. At Mitchell Hospitality Services, we treat everyone with respect, or you don't work there. That's not revenge, that's standards." More questions flew, but Brenda guided me to her car. "You did good in there," she said as we drove away. "Really good." "Is it really over?" I asked. "The legal part? Yes. Gerald Davis would be a fool to pursue this further." She glanced at me. "But the family part? That's going to take time to heal." She was right. Over the next few weeks, things slowly settled into a new normal. Crystal quit the dishwasher position after 3 days. She moved back in with her parents and filed for divorce. I heard through Terrence that she was working at a small hotel in another city, having learned that her reputation in Chicago was permanently damaged. Terrence moved out of their luxury apartment and into a modest place closer to my house. True to his word, he was working in facility services, learning the business from the ground up. Every Sunday he brought Amari and Zoe to my house after church. The first Sunday was awkward. The babies were confused about where their mama was. "Grammy," 5-year-old Amari asked, climbing into my lap, "why doesn't Mama want to see us?" I held her close. "Baby, your mama is going through some grown-up stuff right now. But your daddy and I, we love you more than anything in this world. You understand?" She nodded against my chest. 3-year-old Zoe was easier. She just wanted cookies and to play in my backyard. Watching Terrence with his daughters, I could see him changing, becoming the man I'd raised him to be. He was patient, present, loving. He'd learned to do their hair, pack their lunches, help with homework. "Mama," he said one Sunday after the girls had fallen asleep on my couch, "I want to apologize, really apologize, not just for what happened at the restaurant, but for everything, for letting Crystal change me, for forgetting who I was and where I came from." "I forgive you," I said simply. "But don't apologize to just me. Apologize to all those people at the company you treated poorly. Make it right through your actions." "I will," he promised. "I am. And he was. I got reports from his supervisors that he was humble, hard-working, respectful. He'd sit with the older employees during breaks and listen to their stories. He'd volunteer for the hardest jobs. He was earning back respect the right way. At church, Pastor Reynolds asked me to share my testimony one Sunday. I stood up in front of the congregation, in front of all these people who'd loved me and supported me, and I told them everything. I learned something through all this, I said. I learned that real wealth isn't about money or power or fancy clothes. Real wealth is about character. It's about how you treat people when nobody's watching. It's about standing up for what's right even when it costs you something. The church erupted in amens and hallelujahs. And I learned, I continued, that when you're going through hard times, you find out who your real family is. Sometimes it's blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up for you, who pray for you, who stand in a courtroom to support you. Family is who you choose and who chooses you back. After church, so many people came up to hug me, to tell me their own stories of being mistreated and underestimated, to thank me for showing them that dignity matters more than money. 6 months after the court hearing, I made some changes at Mitchell Hospitality Services. I promoted Shanice to training coordinator. She now teaches new employees about workplace respect and company culture. I created a program to help employees go back to school, offering tuition assistance and flexible schedules. And I promoted Terrence, but not to management. Not yet. He was now a team leader in facility services, still doing the work but also mentoring others. He needed to earn his way back up, and he was okay with that. I also started telling my story publicly. I did interviews about building a business from nothing, about the importance of treating employees well, about standing up to cruelty even when it's hard. My company grew even more. Turns out people want to support businesses that have values and stick to them. 1 year after that terrible dinner, I was sitting in my backyard on a Sunday afternoon. Terrence was grilling. He'd finally learned how to make my daddy's ribs recipe. Amari and Zoe were playing on the swing set Raymond had built years ago, their laughter filling the air. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Mitchell? A woman's voice, hesitant. This is Crystal. I was silent for a moment. What do you want, Crystal? I wanted to apologize, really apologize. What I did was unforgivable. I was cruel and selfish and you were right. About everything. I did look down on people. I did think I was better than everyone else. And I hurt a lot of people, including you. Why are you calling me now? I asked. Because I've been in therapy for the last year, working on myself, trying to understand why I became that person, and my therapist said I needed to make amends. She paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And thank you. Thank you? For not just firing me, for trying to teach me something, even though I didn't want to learn it at the time. Those 3 days washing dishes were the worst and the best days of my life. They woke me up. I looked at my son, at my grandbabies, at this beautiful life I'd fought so hard to build and protect. Crystal, I said slowly, I accept your apology, but you need to apologize to all those employees you hurt. And you need to apologize to your daughters, because they heard about what you did, and they need to know that's not who you want to be. Can I see them? She asked, her voice breaking. Amari and Zoe? I've been clean and sober. I'm working on myself, and I miss them so much. That's between you and Terrence, I said. But if he agrees, I won't stand in the way. Those girls need their mother, but only if you can be the kind of mother who teaches them to treat people right. I will be, she promised. I swear I will be. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking. Terrence came over and sat next to me. Was that who I think it was? Yes. What did she want? I told him. He was quiet, processing. Do you think people can really change, Mama? He asked. I thought about my own journey, about the scared 18-year-old girl who left Mississippi with nothing, about the hard years, the failures, the times I wanted to give up, about building something from nothing through sheer determination and faith. I think people can change if they want to badly enough, I said, but they have to do the work, and they have to prove it through their actions, not just their words. He nodded. I'll think about it, about letting her see the girls, but supervised at first, and only if she really has changed. That's fair, I agreed. Amari ran up to us, breathless and happy. Grammy! Daddy, watch me on the swings! We watched her pump her legs, going higher and higher, her braids flying behind her, her face full of pure joy. You know what, Mama? Terrence said quietly. I'm glad it all happened. I mean, I'm not glad I hurt you or that Crystal hurt people. But I'm glad we got this. He gestured at the scene before us, the simple backyard, the children playing, the smell of ribs on the grill, the peace of a Sunday afternoon. This is real. This matters. Not fancy restaurants or designer clothes or impressing people who don't really care about us. Look at you, I said, bumping his shoulder with mine. All grown up and wise, he laughed. I had a good teacher. As the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Complete peace. I'd been knocked down, humiliated, betrayed. But I'd gotten back up. I'd stood my ground. I'd protected my employees and my dignity. I'd taught my son an important lesson. And I'd come out stronger on the other side. That's the thing about being underestimated. When people think you're weak, when they think they can push you around because you dress simply or drive an old car or don't flash your wealth, that's when you show them what you're really made of. I'd built an empire, not because I wanted power, but because I wanted to create good jobs and treat people right. And when someone threatened that, when someone tried to turn my company into a place where cruelty was acceptable, I'd fought back. Not with more cruelty, but with consequences, with standards, with the courage to stand up and say, this is not who we are. Later that evening, after Terrence and the girls had gone home, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and thought about everything Mama had told me all those years ago. Loretta, baby, you got something special in you. Maybe she was right. Maybe what was special wasn't that I made money or built a company. Maybe what was special was that I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot what it felt like to be looked down on, to be underestimated, to be treated as less than. And because I never forgot, I made sure my company would be different. A place where everyone mattered, where the dishwasher and the CEO both deserved respect, where hard work was valued and cruelty was not tolerated. That was my legacy. Not the money or the properties or the business, but the thousands of people who had good jobs, who were treated with dignity, who could support their families and build their own dreams. Crystal had called me a pauper, tried to humiliate me, tried to make me feel small. But she was wrong. She'd always been wrong. Because the richest person in any room isn't the one with the most money or the fanciest clothes. It's the one with integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right even when it's hard. And by that measure, I was the wealthiest woman in Chicago. My phone buzzed with a text from Shanice. Mrs. Mitchell, just wanted to say thank you again for everything. My daughter starts college next month because of the tuition program. You changed our lives. I smiled and texted back, you earned it through your hard work. I'm proud of you. That's what it was all about. Not revenge, not putting people in their place, but creating a world where hard work was rewarded, where people were treated fairly, where everyone had a chance to rise. Crystal had gotten what she deserved, not because I was vindictive, but because actions have consequences. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. But more importantly, she'd opened the door for change and for growth, for becoming better. And that, ultimately, was the greatest victory of all. As I got ready for bed that night, I said my prayers like Mama taught me. I thanked God for the trials that made me stronger, for the people who loved me, for the chance to make a difference in people's lives. And I thanked Him for teaching me that true power isn't about dominating others. It's about lifting them up. That's a lesson Crystal never learned at her fancy business school. But maybe, just maybe, she was learning it now. And if she did, if she really changed and became someone who treated people with kindness and respect, then maybe something good could come from all this pain after all. That was my hope. Not just for her, but for everyone who'd ever been looked down on, pushed aside, or told they weren't good enough. We all deserve dignity. We all deserve respect. We all deserve a chance. And anyone who forgets that, anyone who thinks they're better than others because of money or status or appearance, well, they need to remember one thing. You never know who's sitting at the table with you. You never know what battles people have fought, what mountains they've climbed, what empires they've built. The woman in the simple dress might own the building you work in. The man in the old car might be the CEO of your company. The person you look down on today might be the one holding your future in their hands tomorrow. So treat everyone with kindness. Show everyone respect. Because in the end, that's what really matters. Not how much money you have or what designer labels you wear, but how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. That's the measure of a person's true worth, and that's a lesson I'll keep teaching for the rest of my life. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.